We're back.
Yeah, Kev, it's you, man.
What? It's not me.
The echo.
Echo.
It's back, all right.
Okay. Live on YouTube as well. There.
So, Dev, have you looked up in any of the outdoor rinks and around your place, see if they're doing anything?
No. There's nothing around me, man. The closest thing is the Olympic one downtown. But other than that, I don't think there's one in Inglewood or Ramsey.
Looking for what?
Well, with all the restrictions, what we can and can't do, whether or not outdoor rinks are going to be a thing this winter, or at least for the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's all confusing. Like even here in BC, it's confusing.
All right, we can start if we can fix this echo.
We are live. Happy Saturday afternoon or morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I'm Kevin Olenek. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. Like us on Facebook. We've had a few new likes this weekend, so welcome to those. Also, subscribe on YouTube. We are also live on YouTube, so you can join us there as well. And then, of course, you can subscribe on where your favorite podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc., etc., etc. There are some faces we have not seen for a long time. There were myths that they went ashore, away, but they have returned. We bring back Noble Nation. Hello, Tyler. How are you?
Hello. It's nice to be back. Yes. We had an early start to winter here, which kind of sidelined me there for last week. I was planning to be on, but yeah, lots going on between work and also trying to keep our rec hockey league going here amidst COVID-19. So lots on the go in Noble Nation this last little while, but it's great to be back with you guys.
It's great to have you back. And then a man that has been spending time with strippers, Devin.
Well,
what it sounds like.
It's not really quite accurate. But yes, I've been selling peelers.
Selling what? Sorry?
Peelers.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Man, this echo is just killing me. So yeah, I've been around Southern Alberta, just selling some peelers, and I've been working hard. I'm the new Amped Advantage manager as well, so I've been busy doing that during the week. Thank you. And yeah, I like Tyler. I'm happy to be back doing this. It feels like forever, but yeah, let's talk some hockey here.
Yes, I think there's a need to talk a lot of hockey. I think there's emotional drain. Sean, hello.
Hello, Kevin.
Wow, that hit
Oh.
too. So
What is
apologies.
going on?
We have a bit of a small technical issue here, but we'll get through this. I think it's just little bits and pieces. This is what we get with Zoom, so that happens. But how are you doing, Sean?
I'm doing well. I'm as just like Devin, that this echo is driving me nuts. But yeah, I'm doing well. It's surviving through this everything going on with COVID. We're now in a semi restricted lockdown, whatever you want to call it here in Calgary. So just surviving. I'm missing my hockey though. I'm really missing it.
Yeah, it's so weird because usually one of our topics this week would be the Thanksgiving playoff, the American Thanksgiving playoff, myth or fact, because that's the old, like, if you're not in the playoffs by American Thanksgiving, you don't get into the playoffs. Although the last two Stanley Cup finalists were not in the playoffs at the American Thanksgiving break. That was being St. Louis and Dallas. And and then we would maybe have a debate on, does changing coaches get you into the Stanley Cup final? But we can't have those because, yeah. So I think we all need to talk hockey, but we'll have to start with some COVID related problems. Sadly, the World Juniors is scheduled to start the same time it always does. It is a tradition and something that is always well watched on TSN. We always remember the memories. One of my favorite memories is Jordan Eberle, "Can you believe it?" And Pierre McGuire says, "I can." Like, we've had some incredible teams, some incredible hockey from there. But this year's a little bit different. There has been a COVID outbreak with World Juniors. They've had to cancel practice until the 6th. It is leading people to question whether or not this should happen. And it is our poll question. If you follow on Twitter, our podcast hockey poll question is, should the World Juniors be canceled? And I'm going to start with Tyler, and then we'll go to Devin and Sean. So I'm directing a little bit differently, if people notice. We had a chat about that off air. So what do you think? Where are we at?
No, you got to try and play the tournament, find all avenues and exhaust all avenues to make the tournament happen, especially if you're the IIHF. They've already had to cancel a bunch of tournaments earlier in the year. The World Junior Championship's one of their big ones. They're having it in Edmonton, which is, coincidentally fairly convenient, seeing as Rogers Place and the city's had the experience with doing bubble hockey for the NHL. So it's just too easy an answer to say, let's cancel it. They're best set up for being successful at doing a bubble version of the World Juniors in Edmonton, and they got to push forward with it. This idea of canceling it, something pretty extreme would have to happen, I think, for that to occur.
Yeah, overall, I think that they'll figure it out. And they like Kevin said, it starts on Boxing Day, December 26th. They just need to figure out how that COVID case got into their quote unquote bubble. And they won't resume until the 6th. So that gives them 20 days to kind of figure everything out. And if they really need to, they can try and extend the roster just in case another COVID case happens. So it's one of those fluid things, as everything has been within the past since March. So yeah, I just think that canceling it is, they can make it happen. They can make this tournament happen, and they should make it happen. And that, I might be biased towards that because I want to watch some hockey along with everybody else. And especially with the draft coming so late, it's still fresh in everybody's mind who everybody drafted, and you want to see those top players play. So IIHF, get your shit together and let's go.
Yeah, it's a wait and see for me. I want to see it happen. I think they should do everything they can to try and make it happen. Just to correct you there, Devin, for the first time in a few years, it actually starts on Christmas Day.
Yes.
the World Juniors this year. So we're going to have, if they can make it all work, we're going to have hockey on Christmas, which would be a great present for 2020. Canada starts on the 26th though, but and that's the big thing is you got kids coming from all over the world, and that's the biggest logistical hurdle they have to figure out is how tight a bubble all these teams are in, not just Canada, because it was just Canada that had the 2 cases. I think it was 2 positive tests that came back this week. So it's like I said, for me, it's just wait and see. Don't shut things down and say that it can't happen when it's been proven that you can make this happen if you put a tight bubble around the teams. And I know Team Canada is now going to be doing that, and hopefully the other teams as well, other nations as well, will follow suit, and we can get some much needed hockey at the right time of year and making us feel a little bit better about everything, because we need it. Watching hockey in summer was great, but watching World Juniors from Boxing Day on has been just part of our life and our culture and our traditions for years. So if they are able to make it happen, then the ratings are going to be absolutely through the roof, and they'll be able to sell advertising accordingly.
Just a clarification there too. There's 2 players that were tested positive and 1 staff member. So I believe it was a staff member that potentially brought it in, and that's just me speculating. But yeah, there's just another staff member in there as well.
Yeah, here's the statement. Hockey Canada, this was from Scott Selman, the Senior Vice President of National Teams on Canada's National Junior Team Sport Check Selection Camp. Hockey Canada confirmed earlier today that 2 players in Canada's National Junior Team Sport Check Selection Camp have tested positive and have been placed in a quarantine at the team hotel in Red Deer. I'm on the wait and see side too. Like, yeah, do I want the World Juniors to happen? Absolutely. I think I agree with all of you. I think we need it. I think even for, let's look at this from a player that is graduating from junior that may never play professional hockey again. There are probably some players in their final moment that haven't been able to play a competitive junior hockey game since March. And it gives them an opportunity to have that. So from that perspective, I think that's important to bring out. I guess there's my 2 concerns is how the quarantine works and how the bubble works. And you know, we've got players from other countries, obviously, that have to go through an isolation period. And I believe that isolation period has actually lessened from 14 to around 10. So that's, I guess, fine. That's one thing I need. But the other thing is I'm sorry, you folks from Alberta, I have to bring this up, and I hate to bring up the political side of this, but if a COVID case breaks out in this, there is going to be such a political shitstorm in Alberta that it's like, if it was in BC, I don't know if it would be as big of a political shitstorm as it would be in Alberta. That's the one thing that is the other concern is if there is a case, my God, is the shit going to hit the fan? Pardon my French.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that would be the case. I think but I can see why you think that there, Kev. It's such a tough time. You don't know what's going to happen and what we have. So I think we got to find that they just have to find a way to have that tight bubble and make it work like they did, like the NHL did in the summer. I think they even have to tighten that bubble even more. As we talked with Andy last week, he talked about how some of the staff was able to go home and they were getting tested all the time, but they could still, just because you test negative doesn't mean you don't have it. So I do think that they have to look at that and look at ways to improve that bubble and make it so that it is as impenetrable as possible, and make it happen. Because as you said, it's there's kids who may not get a chance to play any meaningful professional games. There's kids that won't get to play any sort of meaningful national games past this, and they deserve to have their time. If they don't get it, it's going to be an absolute shame.
Perhaps I'm missing something here, but the NHL, when they had to try and get all their players to the two bubbles, which eventually became one bubble, there were players from all over the world having to enter Canada. So I'm not sure how there's much difference in this case with the juniors. I think the key is, each federation, as well as the organizers and the IIHF, they need to have, I guess compliance officers is probably the best term to describe it. They need to have, every team accountable for enforcing the protocols and disciplining when they're not followed, and then have a higher level of that with the IIHF. If they get the buy-in like there was with the NHL, they can pull this thing off no problem.
The other thing, I guess, would be, does the IIHF have the means to do everything that needs to be done to make sure that the bubble is strictly safe and follow through with those policies properly? Once again, I don't know much about that, but that just from an outside perspective, that would be the one question I would have to make sure that everybody's safe to do what needs to be done to get this thing going.
I think they do, because this is their money-making event. It's not the men's world championships, and that's happened in the spring, and all 99.9% of the time are in Europe, and North America doesn't really pay attention enough to it. Meanwhile, here you get the same, probably similar viewership for that and this in Europe, but in Canada alone, the World Juniors is a appointment viewing. So I think they do make a lot of money off of it, and as well as TSN. So I think they have the partners available to make it happen. So I think they have it. I hope they have it, and I hope they find a way to make it work, because we all want, and we all as hockey fans need some good news and some normalcy, and having the World Juniors even without fans, that will be the big loss, especially because it was supposed to be in Edmonton, and we all know how crazy the crowd can be at World Juniors. Even without them, it's going to be something that we're going to want to be able to watch as much as possible.
And I also think that, like, let's be honest, from TSN's perspective, they haven't had anything truly meaningful in terms of hockey on their channel since March. Not like they didn't get the playoffs. That was Sportsnet. They had the Raptors. That's fine, and that's well rated. But in terms of hockey, this is going to be their biggest moneymaker, and they are going to do whatever that they possibly can to make sure that this happens. But I guess my other concern is if you're a parent, and I'm not a parent, I wonder where you're at with that. I mean, that's going to be a big question. Like,
I just want to clarify, TSN also had the Masters, which is a very big thing.
But
I don't know if you guys know.
No, okay, yes, they had the Masters, they have NFL, they have a lot of these things, but hockey is still going to be their biggest rating thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, it really depends on where your political stance are and what you believe COVID really is a thing or not. And I hate to say that, because there are people out there who think that. So being a parent, you got to be concerned with your kid at that time. But it really depends on where your head is at and where you actually stand with COVID. Not to get political, but that's just the truth.
Yeah, I think, every parent's going to have a different view on that. There's definitely going to be a big segment of them that are still latched onto the idea of seeing their child pursue the dream and chase the dream, and perhaps all the COVID stuff kind of is in the background. It's not out of the picture, but it's more in the background than the idea of getting them on the ice and playing this tournament.
And Tyler, what are your thoughts on the officials are all going to be from Canada? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my view on that all the time is the best guys should be doing the biggest games. So I don't think that nationality should matter. It doesn't at the Olympics when the NHLers are there. I remember Peter Forsberg going off before the Sochi final in 2014. How 3 of the 4 on the crew were Canadian, and the 1 American lived in Calgary or something like that. Thought it was a bunch of crap. All of the Swedish players turned around and said, these are the best guys. We want them doing the games. So I don't believe that that's a big issue, but I'm not the guys in the skates doing this level of competition. There's certainly a lot of pressure on them. And we've seen historically the IIHF with this tournament always have so-called neutral referees, depending on what the matchup is. So yeah, that would be a significant change, but the guys that are chosen are obviously very accomplished and very qualified to do the job.
And generally, Canada has the highest quality of officiating. I mean, yes, I'm sure that Sean will still be yelling at the officials on the TV, but Canada's generally been the higher quality officiating. Is that fair to say?
Well, we would have the most depth theoretically. I mean, and if not for this country, the United States, but I think it's important for the IIHF and for the European countries to have their officials represented at this tournament for the growth of their officiating too. So that's a big impact to. It's not just a fairness thing. It's also about growing the game all across the world in all aspects, including officiating. So, but really, I think people make too much of the whole birth certificate thing or where people live or this and that. I mean, once they drop the puck, it's a team in a dark uniform and a team in a white uniform, and it's happening hella fast out there. And there isn't the time to be lost in thoughts about who's from where. You're just looking to call the infractions as you see them.
It's just another thing that you have to deal with it being such a different year for me. As much as I would love to see the European officials be able, and around the world officials be allowed to come in and officiate, just as Tyler said, for their development more than anything else. It's just, unfortunately, it's just the reality of the situation, and you need to find a way to make it work. And if keeping the officials local, then that makes and that helps get the event off the ground and completed without any issues, then let's go for it. Let's do it, because like I said, it's you just have to find a way to make it work, and people have to, and the federations have to understand that this isn't a normal year, and there has to be concessions from what a normal tournament would look like.
The biggest thing that I have is that I'm tired of the conspiracy theories. The reason why the refs are where they are is because they're able. The reason why they've climbed the ranks the way they have is because they have been able to be neutral in the game and not have favoritism and not have that swaying one side or the other. Like these guys are the best of the best as of right now, and you got to trust them, and you got to trust their judgment calls. I mean, the whole idea that they will favor one team over another is complete hogwash and bullshit. So I can understand the thought process behind it, but in reality, like Tyler said, the game's moving so fast. If you're not thinking about just making the right calls, then I mean that ref wouldn't be where he is right now, and he wouldn't be able to climb the ranks higher than reffing World Juniors. Like, you got to think about the integrity of that. So that whole notion, I can't stand.
Yeah, for me, it's to be able to do the games without without thinking about it at all. You see a trip, the arm goes up. It's really that simple. I've joked with players a couple of times in the past when they start thinking that it's unfair. I was like, guys, we're not that clever. Like, if you think we're clever enough to engineer the game in a certain way, like you're putting too much thought into it.
Yeah, I was just curious about that from your perspective, because
yeah, I mean, inevitably, Kevin, as the tournament goes on, if it gets off the ground and you get deeper into it, and there's a call here or a call there that's controversial, I'm sure there's going to be complaining about it. But like I said at the beginning of this, I think the best guy should be doing the biggest games, and I think we'll all agree that this country produces the best hockey officiating.
So far on our poll, we've got 40% saying no and 40% saying wait and see. So go on Twitter, podcast_hockey, and vote on that poll. Have comments. We'll get to those as well. Again, apologies. I don't know what on my end I'm doing wrong, but there is static, and I'm sorry for that. What would have been nice, what would have been perfect, my idea was you have the World Juniors, you finish up the World Juniors, and then you go into the National Hockey League season. But that doesn't look like that's going to happen for two reasons. January 1st does not look like a good start date. There is some issues in terms of how what the players want and the owners want. So there's so much going on that it doesn't look like a January 1st start date. And the idea of a 60-game season is looking a little bit more and more not possible. We won't get too much into that. I mean, if you guys have some thoughts on that, then we'll get into that. But one of my big things that I think is fascinating is we do know that the divisions are going to change. We do know, no matter how it looks, it's going to be an all-Canadian division. So we're not having the Pacific Division. I mean, it may change depending on things, but we're pretty much, we've got different divisions this year. I'm going to start this time. I'm going to go Sean, Devin, Tyler. Does this change teams' strategy? So when we look at Vancouver as an example, a lot of this, when it was the off season, Markstrom gone, Tanev gone, Levo gone, the black Vancouver Canucks skate jersey gone, all stolen by the Calgary Flames. Baker gone. They're all now Calgary Flames. But like, it was, from the Canucks perspective, it looked like a bit of a step back. But with the all-Canadian division, which appears to be more of a wide open, does this change the strategy for teams of how they think about this year? Oh yeah, as I said, Sean, Devin, Tyler. Now
I don't think it starts off with any changes. I think you just go into the season figuring out what you can do without hurting the long-term development, especially for the Canucks. But I think all the teams, all 31 teams, aren't going to want to throw away prospects and picks and assets to try and win what is going to be a weird season, at least until they have an idea of what it looks like. But maybe come whenever the trade deadline is, if you feel that you've got you can take advantage of what the season is. Say the Canucks get off to a big, strong start and are able to look like say Pettersson, Hughes, both taking up big steps. Holtby and or Demko, both Holtby regains his Vezina form, and or Demko keeps taking the steps forward, and then somehow they've got the depth that steps up, and they want to add something. It's the same as any other time. Like, if you have the ability to capitalize on a good season, you take it. But I don't think I think teams are going to be very cautious about moves they make, at least in the early part of the season, until they know what the season looks like and what the playoffs look like as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another expanded playoff system this upcoming year. because of the shortened season and because of some of the demands that the owners are requesting of the players. But until they iron a lot of those details out and we have an idea of what the season looks like and what the future looks like for the NHL, because how quickly they can roll out the vaccine, how quickly these the teams can get fans back in the arenas and start making revenue off of ticket sales again, I think is going to have much more of an impact on how teams address needs and within their team and their strategies, as opposed to just these potentially just one season realignment with the divisions.
Yeah, I just don't see it being as big of a chess game as far as trades or trying to adapt your team to suit the Canadian League or the Canadian division that's going to be happening. I don't see it. I mean, Vancouver just has over $1.5 million left in salary for the cap, and then Calgary's just over $1 million. So it just as two examples right there. I don't see GMs trying to skew or change their ideologies of what their team is or what the team needs to be because of just having that Canadian division. It just doesn't make sense to me. And if you're trying to do that for like Andy Stachy last week was talking about potentially the first third of the season, depending on vaccine and borders opening. You're changing your ideology and the way that you've been trying to build your team just for that third of a season or potentially the entire season of just 1 year that's going to be shortened. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm going to echo those thoughts as well. I don't see their strategy or the way they're managing their team really changing all that much. And if you look at it, like if you're Calgary, Edmonton, or Vancouver, or on the other side of it, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, I mean, half of what you're playing is what you play on a regular basis anyways. A big change for an all-Canadian division would be Winnipeg, because their divisional opponents are all in the U.S. So that for them, maybe there's a bit of a difference, a disadvantage there. Perhaps they got to look at things a little bit differently in terms of game planning against their regular opponents now. But I don't see it. This is a temporary situation. The teams have to be looking beyond this season.
I guess for me, why this becomes a little bit more fascinating is, I mean, everybody has done their top. A lot of people have done their top 7 Canadian. And, depending on who you're looking at, a lot of people have Toronto at the top, and that's fine. But I'm looking at a team like Edmonton, and I do wonder, like, with this wide open, with a McDavid and a Draisaitl, would there be a bit more pressure especially after that disastrous qualifier? I wonder with a team like the Oilers, if this changes a little, because I have a hot take. I don't know if it's that hot of a take. I'll let Heidi rate this, but I think of all the teams with the most pressure in this Canadian division, I definitely think that's the Oilers. I maybe the Flames would fall second because of all the moves that they made with the Markstroms and the Tanev, but like, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Oilers to do very well and make a bit of a statement, and especially after what happened with Chicago last year. So that's a team I wonder that, like, they smell the blood in the water, and they may try to do something different to make sure that they cement themselves at the top. Am I offside there?
I think you're onto something a little bit there, Kev, but I think that it didn't matter what the division was going to be. Edmonton and Toronto, I think specifically because of how they both didn't get out of the qualifying rounds in the bubble playoffs, that I think both teams have significant pressure on them to make the playoffs and to at least win a round at the very least. So I don't think it really mattered what the divisions looked like. I think that that pressure was going to be there no matter what. I do think Edmonton did, and Toronto both made some interesting moves that showed a bit of their urgency to try and beef up their teams in different ways. And then Calgary as well with the addition of Markstrom, while other Canadian teams were more content dabbling around the edges a little bit. Vancouver's coming off being knocking off the defending champs and taking Vegas to the limit in round 2. Calgary had some injury troubles with Kachuk. But I thought they showed a little bit of growth in the playoffs, and now looking back. And then you've got Montreal, who surprised people. So, and they made some big moves as well, but I think they're still looking a little bit longer term, especially with their young players. So I do think that there is some pressure there, but I don't think the changing of the divisions really changes the level of pressure that was for specifically Toronto and Edmonton, because I think those two are up above everyone else, with Calgary close behind, but on a different level in terms of the internal market pressure to do well in the season and in the playoffs.
Just picking up on Sean's points there, I think all the Canadian teams have pressure on them in some form or another, really, other than Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa, it's been so long since they've been on the ice, and they're going through a rebuilding period, and they've got a younger team now. So I think for them, they're it's a pretty fresh slate. But for all the other teams, I mean, even Montreal, they surprised in the bubble playoffs. Now that expectation has raised a little bit. What can they do next? And the same for the Canucks, right? You go to the 7th game against Vegas, and there's been a lot of changes. But now I as a fan would expect that they're going to take another step forward. You're not hoping to see regression. So there's pressure on all the teams for different reasons, but certainly Toronto and Edmonton in terms of the money they're spending and the expectations that's been there already for a couple of years. It'll be awfully disappointing for those teams if they don't make the playoffs. I just want to comment on the playoffs very quickly. Sean mentioned maybe an expanded format. I don't see that. I think if they're going to try to recover as many regular season games as they can and still get back to a fairly normal calendar. We've seen it before with the lockout shortened seasons, 48 regular season games, and then a traditional playoff format. I'm thinking it's going to go more like that than having a 2014 playoff field. I think that was a one and done situation.
I want to see that expanded playoff. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, I agree with Tyler on that. But as far as pressure from Canadian teams to do better, I think there's a lot of pressure on Montreal. Look at the moves that Marc Bergevin made. He brought in Joel Edmondson, a solid defenseman who's going to be potentially paired with Jeff Petrie, who's an underrated defenseman as well. Then he also brought in Tyler Toffoli, traded for Josh Anderson, and brought in Jake Allen to back up Carey Price. And I like that. To me, I feel like Bergevin's been on the hot seat for at least 1.5 to 2 years now of trying to produce something and get some traction with his hockey team here. So I believe that he has a lot of pressure on him to make the moves to make sure that they're competitive. And yeah, they upset Pittsburgh in the first or in the qualifying round of the playoffs. And that showed that they were able to do that. And like I said, the acquisition of Jake Allen really is going to hopefully give Carey Price the rest that he needs to make sure that he could help carry the team further into the playoffs. So I think that Montreal's right up there with Toronto and Edmonton as the top 3 teams to make a splash, along with Calgary. I think Vancouver overall is shown that they have the depth and they have the kids that can make them a really good contender every single year. And I guess the only question would be Holtby and Demko, if they can be a good tandem to make sure that they're able to make those next steps into the playoffs and going forward. But yeah, I'd say Montreal definitely is up there for having that pressure.
My only counter to that there, Dev, is Montreal's only going as far as their kids up front. They've got Koketniemi, they've got Suzuki, specifically those two, that are going to be the ones that are going to drive it. If they can take that next step, then I think they are up there. But if they don't, then that's an issue. But all the moves they made were based off of long-term and a longer-term approach. They brought in Toffoli for 4 years. They brought in Josh Anderson for 7. They brought in they brought in Jake Allen and signed him to a new a 2-year extension at a much better cap hit after this year, as well as Edmondson. They signed him to a long-term contract as well. They're looking a lot like, at least internally. I think they're looking at 21, 22 and beyond as to when this team really hits its stride. But they've got the ability to surprise. That's why I don't think they're the and I think a lot of fans understand that. And that's why I don't think the pressure is quite there as opposed to the Edmontons and Torontos, where they've had failure after failure with their current superstar cores not living up to what they can do. And it's up on the GM's shoulders to try and surround them with the right players. So that's where I'm at in terms of that. Like, I see where you're coming from, but I just think that the core in Montreal hasn't had the failures that those other two have. So it's not like this is like a must win season. While I think that you can kind of make that argument for Toronto and Edmonton.
Yeah, well, and I agree with you in that sense. I mean, like I said, I think Montreal is top 3 in trying to improve their team and to make sure that they can actually make that next step. I mean, Shea Weber. So there's 3 different people that are putting pressure, are not putting pressure, but want to motivate their team to do better. Is Shea Weber. He's not getting younger. He wants that cup, and he wants to make sure that he can produce at the level that he's known to. And Carey Price isn't getting younger either. And I just see that internal pressure building more so than any other team. But yeah, I mean, as far as like the top 2 teams, it's definitely Edmonton and Toronto they weren't able to do what they were expected to do. And once again, Marc Bergevin, I feel like he's looking behind him to make sure he's trying to stay ahead and keep his job. I've like I said, two years ago, I was expecting him to get fired, but then he made the Shea Weber move. He made the Mikhail Sergachev move. Those, like the Mikhail Sergachev move for Duran, that was a massive win. Now we need something now, get going kind of move, because I mean, look at him down in Tampa Bay. He's a stud. And I do want to get into Tampa Bay here eventually during this podcast. But those are the 3 players or 3 people within that organization that I feel is making that push to make sure that this is potentially the year for them.
And I think it's with all these teams other than Ottawa. I think all the other 6 teams all have the ability to be a team that can push for playoffs and push for a deep run, and they've got the backing of. I think they would have the backing of the owners if they can get it. If they show that they're having a good season to make those moves. But it's all about, I think, right now. I don't think any of them are going to make any moves that are going to have long-term detrimental effects. And that's why I'm saying I don't think there's a significant change in strategy on how you handle, say, moving first-round picks or anything like that, unless you really feel that you have a legit opportunity to win a cup.
And again, you are talking about Marc Bergevin, who it seems like he has a bit of a trigger finger, and especially if someone's not playing well, like Brendan Gallagher was talked about multiple times of always being benched in the playoffs or in that qualifying round, and that had to do with the Claude Julien being the head coach, and I feel like there was some fire there. Don't think that there wasn't, because there definitely was. Brendan Gallagher wants to win, and if he's not up to what the coach needs, then don't put it past Claude Julien to talk to Bergevin about potentially moving. Don't get me wrong, a good player like that, but if he's not producing, then he's not producing. So, it's going to be interesting to see how everything kind of, once the season starts, who are the contenders, who are playing well, and who aren't playing well.
Well, the other thing too, just by the way, if the Montreal Canadiens do want Brendan Gallagher, I'm sure there are 30 other teams that would be more than willing to accept Brendan Gallagher, like for sure, like absolutely. Just what's happening there, that's to me weird. Like maybe there's something I don't know about Brendan Gallagher, but if we're going 48 games, which is what I think, there are going to be teams, I think, that may have a better record than they actually are, and may have a worse record than they actually are. And I know that, your record says a lot, but a team like the Ottawa Senators or the Buffalo Sabres, I think, can get off to a really good start and put themselves in a pretty good position to where, like, if Calgary gets off to a really bad start, I think it's going to be really hard for them to get going again. That's the thing that does also interest me as well, is how are these teams going to start, and like how we perceive them will be different than maybe the reality of the situation is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because it was at the last shortened lockout shortened season was the first season that the Leafs really saw some sort of got into the playoffs after a big chunk of it was that they started really quickly, and they had started really quickly for the season or two before, and just fell out of the playoffs just at the end of the season. But they didn't have that the runway to do that in that 48 game season. So yeah, we are going to see that for sure, but I don't think it's going to be to a point where teams are going to sell the farm to try and capitalize on it unless they absolutely feel that they can make it happen.
The thing I wonder, I also wonder, just to get to the Flames here quickly, is the Markstrom Rittich. Of all the goaltending tandems, that's the one that fascinates me the most, more than Holtby and Demko, because you have a Rittich that was a notorious good starter, but faded down the stretch, and you have a Markstrom who, depending on who you talk to, like, I mean, all loved in Vancouver, like Markey was hugged, but now is like an inferior goaltender now all of a sudden that he moved to Calgary. He's not as good. He's not that same goaltender that he was in Vancouver all of a sudden for some of the Canuck fans. But that, like, how goaltenders are going to be used is fascinating. Like, you even look at like Price and Allen, Smith and Koskinen, Matt Murray in Ottawa. I think that's going to be fascinating too, because he's struggled for a couple of years, but like he's going to be the number one guy in Ottawa. Does Hellebuck, Hellebuck we can trust mostly. He didn't have a good play in, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't historically been a good goaltender, right? So the goaltending,
he's the best.
Yeah. But he didn't like let's be fair, he didn't have a good play-in round though against the Flames. He got outshone by Talbot.
But at what point do you are you looking at that at a small sample size and over analyzing?
Yeah, I don't know. My point being is that the tandem, I think a Freddie Anderson is fine. I think a Connor Hellebuck is fine, but the places that have tandems and Matt Murray, like, I think that's going to be fascinating how they use a goaltender. And I still think Calgary's going to have some sort of tandem-ish thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see them not playing Riddick a bit more than people think.
Yeah, definitely, Kev. We've seen enough evidence from teams in this off season, Vegas in particular, bringing back both Leonard and Fleury, and then with the Canucks, Demko is supposedly going to become the guy, but there you got Braden Holtby. I'm eager to see what the schedule looks like, but all indications are it's going to be very compressed. You really are going to need two good goalies to make the playoffs this season.
The Leafs have Campbell, as well as they went out and got Aaron Dell as well, to push Jack Campbell as the 1B or backup to Freddie Anderson. And it all comes down to what the schedule looks like and how many games you're going to be playing in 3 and 4 nights, back-to-backs, all that. So I do think you're going to need it, even with the Winnipegs and Torontos where you do, and Ottawa's as well, where you do have a true de facto number one. You're going to need those. You're going to need your tandems, and you're going to need your backups to play a significant amount of the 48 games if that's what the season is.
And I could definitely see Kyle Dubas. The reason why I brought in Aaron Dell is because there could even be a trio, and just rotating the three goalies in there. Because it is going to be a condensed schedule. As long as Freddie Anderson gets into some sort of rhythm, then I think you're laughing, and that could be 2 games on, 1 game off kind of thing. And the game off, he might not even be playing. And that's why you have Jack Campbell and Aaron Dell there as well. So don't be surprised if you don't have some sort of ideology of that either.
Because we don't know what the setup with the AHL, and if they end up having some sort of quote unquote taxi squad as well. There's a lot of details in here that we do not know what they're going to look like. Because if the border's not open and you've got Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton all having their AHL teams based out of the States, how are they going to be able to bring players up if there's an injury, especially with goaltenders? So I think we are going to see either the AHL move up there or some sort of taxi squad. And I actually think it's going to be the latter. I think there is going to be some sort of taxi squad that's going to be doesn't count against the cap, and that's where you're going to have teams stashing goaltenders like Aaron Dell. Maybe the Flames are going to do that with Louis Domingue. And the Canucks probably may look at bringing someone in depending on what the AHL looks like. Because they've got DiPietro, but do you want him sitting there not playing, or do you want him down in Utica playing whatever the AHL looks like? So there's a lot of details that we don't know. And I think that in terms of strategy, Kev, what the schedule looks like will depend on how they handle the starts for these goaltenders. But I do think that you're going to we will see close to 50-50 splits across the board. I think if it's as compressed as I think it could be. And if it's a 48 game schedule, like I said, I could see it 28-20 for your starter, and then 20 starts for your backup or tandem backup, depending on how you handle it.
Major League Baseball offers an example of the taxi squad concept. They didn't have their minor league teams going this season. And they had a larger active roster, plus you could move players between the taxi squad and the active roster within certain parameters. So I'm with Sean. I think, seeing as that's happened in another sport, I think that's the direction the NHL will go. The logistics of trying to run an AHL season with the border closures and stuff seems a little too daunting.
Yeah.
Plus plus that's a nice spot for Louis Eriksson to coast till he can so he can stay off the ice for the Canucks, right?
But again, it has to be a lift squad in Vancouver, not a taxi squad. A lift squad.
Yes. The official ride-sharing partner of the Vancouver Canucks.
Exactly. Yes. it is gonna. I agree. I don't think, especially, and the cost of Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver moving their teams to the RHL teams to Canada is just that's not that's not an expense that they should do. I don't think, but that's that. Yeah, I think that it is going to be will be fascinating. We'll kind of see what's going on with that, but it's going to be an interesting strategy for that.
There was one thing, Kevin, I wanted to raise with the idea of the Canadian division is we were talking earlier about referees at the World Junior Tournament. How is that going to work for the NHL here? Like, are they going to have a pool of guys just doing the Canadian division, or do they go across the border and are out of action for a couple of weeks? Or that's an interesting detail that I'm curious from an officiating point of view to see how that gets worked out. Because in a normal season, the guys work all over the place and have really heavy travel. Actually, it's crazy for the referees, and there's that variety factor. In the bubble hockey there last year, obviously when there was the two venues, the referees stayed within one bubble, but they were still being used across a wide number of different games. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up. I think that's something that will be interesting to see.
That's a great point, actually.
Yeah, because if there's certain teams and certain referees that have a bad history, and I don't know, you'll be seeing them a lot.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, I think I think what they'll do is something similar to what they had in the summer, but just you're going to see the same refs almost game in and game out, because otherwise there's no way that they can, unless they're going to expand how many refs and linesmen that you have available, because otherwise you're going to there's only so many of them, right?
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating. Let's talk about Sergachev. He the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have, I think, had $4.32 in their salary cap, were able to sign Mikhail Sergachev to a $3 million deal. And I don't know how Tampa is going to field a team with twice the salary of the actual salary cap, but we'll leave it to them. They seem to got this all figured out somehow. I guess, first of all, fair or no fair, but let's take this to the Quinn Hughes part. We do, and maybe even to a longer extent, Juuso Välimäki, who is potentially a comparable to Sergachev. I'm not saying he's there. Potential, long-term potential. Devin, you understand when I say potential what that means, right?
Yes, I do not take that literally.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm not saying that Juuso Välimäki is Mikhail Sergachev, but number one left-handed shot defenseman, young defenseman. Do we like the deal for Sergachev, and does this help or hurt how we sign Quinn Hughes and or Juuso Välimäki? We'll go Devin, Tyler, Sean this time.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's comparables everywhere. No matter what, young defensemen are always compared to each other. You have Charlie McAvoy comparison there too. That's similar money to Sergachev. So no matter what type of player you have, I mean, you can always compare them to any other young other defensemen who just signed their out of their entry level contracts. So I think it's a good deal. Maybe a little bit more than I would have thought that a quote unquote bridge deal would have been for him. But I think Quinn Hughes, the whole idea that Vancouver wants to do is lock up Quinn Hughes at a quote unquote team friendly deal for a long time, just because the cap will eventually go up, and it might take 4, even 5 years to get to that point. But having that cost certainty of an amazing player like Quinn Hughes, you want to make sure that he's locked in for a long time. And I think that overall he will definitely get more than Sergachev did for sure. And just hitting on Valimaki as well while I'm talking here. I think that, yeah, both Quinn Hughes and Valimaki, their entry-level deals are up after this potentially shortened season whenever we figure that out. And they are different because Valimaki has only played 24 games in the NHL regular season, only 2 playoff games. And obviously Quinn Hughes was up for the Calder this year. So there's a difference there, and you'll see more so likely a bridge deal with Valimaki. But I think it would be smart for Vancouver to go forward here and lock up Quinn Hughes for as long as they can.
Yeah, at this moment in time, I think the comparable for Hughes is Cale Makar. Whatever Makar ends up doing is going to be something that Quinn Hughes ends up doing. And I agree with Devin. I think the long-term contract is what the Canucks will be hoping to achieve with arguably the best young defenseman in the game. If it's not Hughes, it's Makar, right? So yeah, how much does the Sergachev contract really influence what a Quinn Hughes deal will be? I think there's a little bit of influence, but not dramatically so.
I think it has a little bit, but next year's RFA defenseman class is insane. And it's going to set the market. Whatever happens this year, it really does. I don't think has that big a impact on what happens next year. Because not only do you have Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar looking for new deals coming off their ELCs, you've got Rasmus Dahlin, you've got Miro Heiskanen also coming off of their ELCs and looking for deals. And all 4 of them are franchise level defensemen. And as good as Sergachev is he considered a franchise level defenseman? I don't think he's quite there. So I think it might help them a little bit, but in terms of, it's going to be very interesting to watch all 4 of those players and their agents negotiate with their teams to try and just see what they do. Because of the what the cap's going to look like with the leveling of off of it because of COVID, plus the US TV deal is up after this season, so there's going to be some influx of cash that might bump up the cap in a couple years based off of that. So I don't know. I think it might help, but when you look at the next season's RFA class on in terms of defensemen, it's going to set the bar for everyone else following it. So I don't know if it's going to, if this $4.8 million deal for Sergachev really moves the needle that much to help with any one of those 4 defensemen, because I think all of them are going to make 7+, I think, but I could be wrong. I just don't know if it, like I said, I just don't know if it moves the needle enough based off of who they like, who the comparables are that Hughes will be negotiating off of. Once one of those players signs, that's going to be the bar. So
I think the bar's already set with Ivan Provorov, who just signed at 6.75. And he's a great top 2 defenseman for sure, but he's no Quinn Hughes. That's for sure. So I think that really set the bar last year when he signed that, as far as ELC defensemen getting paid. So look at that contract. That set the bar, I think, for the Sergachev bridge deal, and it will set the bar for all those future RFAs coming next offseason.
And then for the comparison for Valimaki, it just comes down to what Valimaki can do this upcoming season. He's hasn't played a full season in the NHL. Sergachev has been a solid defenseman at the very least for the majority of his ELC, and that's the biggest difference. And I know, Kevin, you're going off of potential and everything like that, but it all comes down to what Valimaki proves this upcoming season. And if he can push his way into the top 4, then he can use that as a comparison. But if he can't, then it doesn't do anything for him.
I almost look at this year for Valimaki in a sense. Probably, I'm 60% certain. Like I think if we get him if the Flames get him in the top 4, that's great. But this almost, I don't want to say a write-off year, but it may not be the year that I think everyone is expecting for Valimaki. I would think 21-22 will be the year that we truly see where Valimaki is at. I just think that there's been so many things kind of going against Valimaki. Like, he's playing well in Europe, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know. I think we see truly where Valimaki's at in 21-22. I think that will be more of an accurate statement of where he is.
And that's why
I agree for sure on that, Kev. I just there's so many signs that point me towards that this might be the year that is actually one of his breakout years. The fact that upper management is so high on him, and they've been vocal about that. When was the last time they were vocal about a young up and coming player, and it say for instance it didn't work out? Sven Berchi, right? They were high on Sven Berchi. They talked him up in the media, and look where he is now. I think that developmental curve at that age is so crucial. And if you pump up the player too much, then they have expectations to reach. But it just seems like they're still talking very high about him. And that, to me, it could be very detrimental to him, like Sven Berchi was. But there's something there, and you could be right that, it could take him half the season to get up to NHL speed to get going again, because he did have a major surgery on his knee, and who knows? But all the talk that is out there about how well he's doing over in Europe, it just points in a positive direction, and I hope that he can do it, and I hope that doesn't get to his head. It doesn't sound like it will. It sounds like he's a very mature individual himself, and I feel good things are coming for him. And just as a side note, he can actually win the Calder this year, potentially. And I know that's putting expectations way up here. I'm just saying that he's only played 24 games in the NHL, and he needs 25 games to push him over the edge to not be eligible for the Calder. So just kind of a fun little tidbit there for you.
And that's where I'm at, is and that's why I'm saying, even in the potential idea that Kevin was pushing, their just Sergachev's and Valimaki's career trajectories are completely different. And the reason Sergachev is getting the 4.8 for 3, I believe what it is because he's been a solid defenseman for the majority of his ELC, while Valimaki's only got 24 games under his belt at this point for his ELC. So even if Valimaki has a season that pushes him into the Calder trophy discussion, even if he has, say, like an Adam Fox type year, in terms that he's on the bubble behind the true contenders, I still think that Calgary's got the leverage behind the fact that he's only done it for 1 year to get him on a 2-year deal in that sub $3.5 million. So I don't think that's why I said, in my opinion, I don't see the ability for him to use Sergachev as a comparison unless everything hits for him this year.
That's fair. We'll see. We'll see what this does to Sergachev as well. But again, I just don't know how Tampa is gonna pull a team out.
They still have to sign Anthony Cirelli
and Chernak.
Yeah.
Those are two massive RFAs that they have to sign. And Elliot Friedman came out and said that on potentially Alex Killorn could be on the way out, but who wants a 31-year-old with the way that he plays, which is hard-nosed, and he still has 3 years left at just under $4.5 million. I don't see how Brisebois is going to get out of this situation. It seems like they have been able to in the past, but God, other than trading a Braden Point, and the reason why I bring up Braden Point is because he's signed now, and he's a good young player that doesn't have any trade clauses that I know of, at least. And they've gone throughout the entire roster asking whether or not, Steven Stamkos can you put down your guard on your trade clause, because it sounds like no one wants to do it. And other than and even if you want to try and trade Alex Killorn, he only has a 10-team list that he wants to get traded to. And who wants to leave Tampa Bay where there's no provincial or state tax, not provincial tax? The only other state tax team is Vegas, and Vegas is capped out as it is right now. So I'm going to be on the edge of my seat, waiting to see what Brisebois does here, because nothing seems like it's going to go their way.
Last year they had to. I'm sure last year they were looking at those options as well, the same players, but no one was taking them, so they ended up having to move JT Miller, and the Canucks offered up a first-round pick and a third-round pick, and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll take it, and it worked out for both teams. This year, I'm looking at it right now, and if the only player that I think they could make it work with is maybe Yanni Gourde. He's the only other one that, yes, he's got trade protection as well, but he that's the problem, is they got all the players that they could potentially move have trade protection of some sort, and it just makes it hard. They've already waived Tyler Johnson, and no one took him. I think there might be something there with Tyler Johnson, with another team potentially willing to take him on, but I could see them trying to do the exact same thing that they did with Tyler Johnson with someone else. Just try and see if they can get him off the books clean. But yeah. Maybe it is even Killorn, because of his age. He's the oldest forward they have on the books at 31, and he's got 4.45 for the next 3 years. And I could see a team taking a chance on that, as opposed to Tyler Johnson, who's a small, an undersized forward who's signed for four years at 5, so, and is a year younger. So I could see the shorter term and a bigger body being a little bit more attractive for teams to just claim off of waivers. So I wonder if that's an option that they do.
I have a feeling this word is coming. Here it is.
Sweetener.
Have
you spent the last 3 weeks working on that?
I've had that in we did that about 6 weeks ago, actually.
Yeah, we did that a while back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Guys.
And just going through the teams that have the most projected cap space, you have New Jersey Devils at just over 17 mil, Los Angeles Kings that is just over 13 and a half, and Ottawa Senators who have just under 12.5 mil, and the Nashville Predators at just under 13. Like those are the bottom 4 teams that have cap space that could potentially do something. But God, once again, there's got to be a sweetener involved to make that happen. Hey there, Tyler.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Whatever you say, Devin.
Thank you.
I'm going to be watching with bated breath to see what Tampa does to try and get under the cap, because at Cernak, I think they'll be able to get signed to another friendly deal. If Sergachev's getting 4.8, Cernak's going to get I think in the 3 to 3.5 range at the very most. Yeah, I know
I
it's
don't think
like,
so.
It's Cirelli is the big one for me. He's a Selke level defense center. Like Cirelli is going to get a lot of money.
Cirelli will get a lot of money. He's a great defensive forward there, but don't turn your nose up on Cernak either, or because he's a right-handed shot defenseman, and he's easily your second line, and he could be potentially pushing for the top pairing defensive minutes. He is a great defenseman, and I think potentially there one of the reasons why there's nothing's happening right now is everybody's waiting to see what Tampa does, because God, who knows what potentially which teams are potentially talking to Tampa Bay about name a player, right? So and once again, if they're talking about other players that have the no trade clause, then they have to get the approval from the player. So anyways, I know I'm going over the same stuff over and over again, but don't put your nose up on Cernak. He's a great player, and I could see him getting just over $4 million for a bridge deal.
I don't see that, just because of points are what may get players paid. And we're talking about a player in 67 games this past year put up 12 points.
What's his time on ice?
Good solid defenseman. I'm not trying to knock him. I'm just saying that if you're paying a player $4 million, you're expecting at least 20 points in those games, I think. So
unless he's a shutdown defenseman, and which he is. He's actually a two-way defenseman. And if you look at his time on ice and you look at the where he's put in it's mostly defensive zone draws that he's been put on the ice for, right? So I understand where you're coming from, but I don't agree with it. Surprise, surprise.
It's also easy when your left side is stacked and your choices of defense partner are Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough, or Mikhail Sergachev. So I know. I said I think I see him falling in that 3 million range, and that's not to me. That's not a bad payday. So for someone like him, but it's still like, say, even if I am right and it's 3 million. But what's Cirelli getting? Like, he's getting over 6 million, I think, right? So that's 9 million right there, and they're already $1.5 million over the cap.
Over 6 million for him, man. Wow.
A 23-year-old Selke center, yeah.
Man, if you're going to sign him long term, for sure. But once again, where's the money? Where's the cap space?
I know, right?
How are they going to do that?
That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to get at, Dev.
That's what I'm getting at too, man. Cernak will be getting more. Will be getting closer to 4 million than 3 or 3.5 or 3.25, if you will. I truly believe that. I will. Let's have a bet here, shall we?
Oh boy.
Yes, let's do it.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, this is the most fired up I've been in a very long time, and I love it. But I want
a right side
defenseman
from Tampa.
Yes. A right side defenseman, young defenseman. Who I like. If you're a up and coming, if you are looking to become a good player and you're right-handed, don't be a forward, be a defenseman and do that well, and you will get fucking paid. Period. It's just like left-handed pitchers in baseball. Like they're hard to come by, but you get paid.
Yeah, and sometimes you just pitch them for 5 innings, even though they've like pretty much dominated a whole baseball team, and you just take them out because analytics tell you to take them out. Oh, sorry. Did I bring that up? One more quick question on this. I'll answer first because are you surprised no one tried the RFA route? I'm going to say no, because nobody has the cap space to truly do this in a way that would like handcuff the Lightning to not match. Like this, could have seen teams do this in the way that the Habs approached Sebastian Aho. We've got a 60-40 shot, but Carolina's going to match. But I don't think a team would have truly taken a fireball shot at Sergachev in this climate right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Kev. There, with the climate and the lack of actual cash available to all these owners because of the lack of revenue and ticket sales, there is not an owner who's going to sign off on front loading that enough to take to be able to make it happen for a team to be able to put together a contract that would make Tampa not match.
It's a risky move in the first place, and then to do it in this environment, I would imagine for most organizations, it's not even crossed their mind. It's just not on for them.
As far as Sergachev goes, no, I don't see it, but definitely for Cernak, once again, going back to him, I feel like a player like that, you could handcuff Tampa Bay because they have a week to basically try and do something, and then they're forced their hands. And I for the dramatic sake of that, I want that, but yeah, I don't see. It just seems like it's too much of a boys' club, just handshake agreement saying, "Oh, I'm not going to do this to you because you could do it to me." But listen, championships fly forever, and whether or not it happens to you down the road or not, I mean, I love that drama. I wish that someone had the balls to go do that.
The NHL needs more off-season drama. Like when you watch what the NBA pulls off, it's like this is like the NHL is boring in comparison to it, but I think a lot of it there is other circumstances to that as well that I think we will get into in another podcast. We don't necessarily have time to delve deep why that is such a huge deal. Fair.
Can I'm going to suggest a topic for tomorrow, for next week's podcast for everyone to do some research on and make a decision on, based off of who's left, because I don't think we're going to see anyone else sign this upcoming week. Who would you offer, Sheets? Because you still have Barzell, you've got Dubois, you've got Cirelli, Roslovic, Vince Dunn, Ethan Bear. There's some interesting options out there if you were to offer Sheets. So let's have that as a topic for next week. Who would you offer, Sheets, and why?
Okay. Final topic is around Gino Odjick, a Canuck legend. No one is going to claim that Gino Odjick is the greatest Vancouver Canuck player of all time, but his popularity, certainly, yes, absolutely. He's been through a lot. He's contributed through the community. I think he's a legend within Canuck folklore. It's hard, even when you look what he did in a hockey sense for Pavel Bure as an example. I don't think that can be understated. The question has come up. Let's see, who do we go with? Let's go Sean, Tyler, Devin here. Does Gino Odjick belong in the Ring of Honor?
And why do you have to leave? I don't know. I actually do not know, because for me, it's like, it depends on what you want your Ring of Honor to be. And I think for me, I lean on no, just because I think you still leave that for players who are that step below jersey retirement, but still need to be honored. That's why you have you've got Kurtenbach, you've got Kirk McLean, and Alex Burrows, the ones that were still very good players, just not at the level to have their jersey number retired. But I completely understand the argument for Gino, because in the role he played for the Canucks in the early 90s, there wasn't many players better than him as a true enforcer in the era of the enforcer. And he opened up time and space for a player who has his number retired for the Canucks in Pavel Bure. So, and then because of his indigenous roots and he really connected with the community afterwards as well, and became a part of not only Canuck folklore, but like the community as well. Always a Canuck, heart of a Canuck. When you say heart of a Canuck, it doesn't take you long to come up with stories about Gino Odjick. And the stories that I've heard about Gino from players like Dana Merzen, who I've been lucky enough to meet and have a couple beers with and talk about the behind the scenes stuff, and as well as the other, like the stories that get passed around through the Canucks fan base. It's hard not to love the guy, but it's just like it's such a tough choice for me because he's not the type of player you would normally put in there. But I completely understand why there's a huge push for him, because he's a cult hero. He's a fan favorite. He checks a lot of boxes that a lot of other players don't. But I was the one who pushed to have this talked about, because I think it's a great conversation, because I think we don't do a good enough job talking about the history and the characters in the game. We talk about how we don't push and promote players enough. We don't push and promote their personalities enough. One of the best personalities in Canucks history is Gino Odjick. One of the best characters in Canucks history is Gino Odjick, and he deserves some sort of honor within the team. Is it Ring of Honor? I'm honestly right on the fence on this, and I wouldn't be upset with him going in.
I'm gonna be a disappointment here and say that I'm on the fence as well, but if you look at the Ring of Honor as a place for players that weren't that elite level player, but had a lasting impact on the organization and the fan base, if you look at that for criteria, then I think you can make the argument that Gino Odjick belongs on the Ring of Honor. But if he goes in there, then I think we've now really broadened the reach of potential players that could go on the Ring of Honor, and how many names are you really going to put up there? But it's certainly in terms of unique impact and the regard to which Gino is held to this day. We're talking now like 25 years beyond the heyday of his time with the Canucks, and still a big name. I think there's definitely a strong argument to include him there.
If you look at the members right now, you have Orland Kirkenbach, Kirk McLean, Snepsis, Pat Quinn, Oland. Did I butcher that name?
Snapped.
You butchered all of the names.
That was a disaster. It was horrendous.
That was
beautiful. So I did my job then as a bushman.
Harold Snaps anyway.
He was a defenseman. I don't know. I'm just looking at online here at Wikipedia. So my apologies to the Canucks fans. I didn't mean to disrespect anybody.
It's a $50 fine.
I don't see Odjick being a part of that, and even just looking at Calgary's version of Forever Aflame, there's only two people involved with that. Pardon me?
Forever Aflame is one of the dumbest things in hockey. It's so stupid. Anyway.
I agree. I mean, just in comparison of what Calgary has compared to what Vancouver has, I just don't see it being a part of it. If you are going to put him into the Ring of Honor, then you do broaden the spectrum of what that means to what criteria you can put into that ring. So I don't see that being. I don't see him being put in. I would respect if he did, but I'm sure there'd be a lot of people with who have their arms up, or sorry, who are up in arms towards that. So yeah, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. Sorry, Kev, but I would love to see them try and do something, because as I said, hockey as a whole doesn't do a good enough job selling their characters and celebrating players even when they've after they've retired. They just go off into the sunset, and I think you do need to find a way to have those characters and those players celebrated in whatever reason and in whatever way. And I know there's a lot of people who got upset about the Ring of Honor when it first was announced, but because they felt like it was taking away from or adding too much celebration. But we need to, like, I want to hear more stories about Gino. Everyone wants to hear more stories about Gino. So in some way, whether it's Ring of Honor or maybe Heart of a Canuck or something, let's find a way to celebrate him.
Go ahead.
No, I just say here to that. I mean, there is a way to celebrate Gino outside of the Ring of Honor, if that's the route that the organization goes.
And then you'd have a bunch of tiers of, you have your retired numbers, your Ring of Honor, and then, oh, we liked you as another one. I don't know. You can celebrate them. You can have their bobblehead night, whatever you want to do. I just don't think that having an official grouping for character players would be. It's nice, but I don't think it's relevant in putting it in kind of a specific category.
I'm one that's lobbying for Dr. Bonnie Henry to be in the Ring of Honor. I know that will not happen. I know that everyone else here will go what Sean just did. If you're watching on it, just put his face and hit the fence. But I'm one that would like to see that. But anyway, I would.
Well, Kevin will get her for a ceremony.
She get and a standing ovation. Okay. Fine.
Yes.
Because she does deserve to be on. But anyway, whole side other thing. With the viaducts going down, with that area all being changed around, what I could see happening is some sort of section / street, something dedicated to Gino Odjick. Like, as an example, you have an Odjick Street or something like that. I could see that happening, but I don't think Ring of Honor. Like I don't even know if that. This is going to sound really weird to say. I don't think that Ring of Honor, Gino Odjick is such a different case that I think, like, with the significance, like, just putting him in a Ring of Honor doesn't. I don't know if that tells the story, but I think if you do like a sort of a section or a street or something like that, I think you can tell the true story of Gino Odjick. And I could see that happening more than the Ring of Honor, to be honest with you. I think that works. Like, even with the new arena for the Flames, I would like a street named Jerome McGinley Way. Like, rename a street. I think that makes, like, rename 12th Street to Jerome McGinley Way. Something like that. That just makes more sense, because that tells the story of Jerome McGinley, other than, yes, we retired his number, but, like, for generations down the road, what do we know about Jerome McGinley? Right. And what did generations down the road know about Gino Odjick and the relationship that he had with the Indigenous community? That would seem to me that you can tell that story much better than the Ring of Honor, in my opinion.
With that in mind, I think there's already something, a route that way to do it. And it may not be a street being named, but there's a statue outside of Rogers Arena commemorating Roger Nielsen
And one of Pat Quinn.
And Pat Quinn. Is there a way to do something similar to that and do that to celebrate him? because as you said, Kevin, he's so different than anything else there. Like, he was an enforcer. He connected with the community. He connected with the indigenous community. He connected with the fan base but differently than anyone else. So there has to be a way to celebrate him, to make it work and celebrate. He's part of Canucks history. Like, that's what it is. It's not necessarily about like in the whole grand aspect. It's not necessarily about celebrating certain players. It's about celebrating the history of the franchise, and within the history of the franchise, there's certain players that connected with the fan base better than anyone else. Like, I'm trying to think, is there someone in Flames history that you think that comes close to what Gino is to the Canucks?
Not off the top of my head, but eventually Mark Giordano. He could easily be kind of close to that. And I know they're separate players, but the impact that he's had on the community in Calgary with the youth is just, he's a part of every single charity, it seems like. And he's just so well known for giving back to the community. And Joe McGinley was the same way. He always had time to sign autographs and you make sure every single kid had their autograph that was there, kind of thing. So in comparison, I mean, I personally can't think of anybody else, but I could think that Mark Giordano, he might be a forever Flame. I don't know. But as far as doing something within the city to remember him and what he did for the community when he was at his peak of his hockey career, for sure.
The name that comes to my mind, and it's not in the same way that Gino has it, but he's a very similar player. And the Flames have embraced him in his post-playing career, is Brian McGrattan.
Yeah.
He has. I mean, he was a part of the Flames for a few years there, but he wasn't completely a Flame through and through, right? Yeah, exactly.
But if you know what he's doing behind the scenes, I think that's huge.
Well, I think massive for sure. But like, as far as like that should be recognized by the NHL community, not just Calgary, period. Because I believe, I don't know if this is when they gave him that role, the Calgary Flames gave him that role. That was the only role in the NHL, period. And I don't know if that is still the case. And hopefully that there's more players that are helping with player development in the emotional and personal side of their lives, and making sure that if they are having problems with substance abuse or anything along those lines, that you do have somebody there who's been through it, who's gone through hell. And if you don't follow McGrattan on Twitter or Instagram, he's a great follow for motivational stuff, showing what he's doing with the Calgary Flames. I think that the NHL should definitely have a section there for people like ex-players like Brian McGrattan. And I don't know enough about Odjick to really comment on whether or not he's deserved by the NHL to be shown to be honored in that way. But with hockey being for everybody, I think potentially there definitely is something there going forward with maybe some sort of charity for the Indigenous people, and making sure that everybody is included, especially with his background and his ethnicity.
The player that came to my mind is Robin Regier. He spent a long enough time. I think they've honored him sort of. I mean, he wasn't the Odjick character, but he did so much in the community that, like, I don't think that was noted, and it was a huge loss when he left. Huge loss on the ice and a huge loss off the ice. I think that would be probably, in my opinion, the closest. He's not Odjick, but a guy like Robin Regier is a guy that I would like to see the Flames honor. But my rant about how the Flames have done this is just it's so bad. Like they have just not done a good job honoring the alumni, in my opinion. That is an area they need to work on for sure. Like I personally think they need to honor Doug Gilmour. They haven't done that. They need to honor Joey Mullen. They haven't done that. Even Colin Patterson, they haven't really done that. That whole dice line. Neuendijk, Roberts. I know that a lot of those players left the organization on bad terms, but I think it would serve well for the Flames to repair that relationship and start honoring those players because they were some of the best players in Flames history.
You're missing one main player out of that too is Theo Fleury as well. I think he needs to be recognized for what he's done for the Calgary Flames. And I mean, Joe Neuendijk, he's a forever a Flame. The only two or one of the two forever Flames that is actually honored within that. So I do agree. I think what they need to do is also Mika Kiprasov. I think his number needs to be retired easily. And but yeah, they haven't done enough for their alumni and showing their appreciation for what they've done for the Calgary Flames. And yeah, I think the Canucks have done a better job doing that, and hopefully they can somehow getting back to the main point here, somehow honor Odjick for what he was and who he was in the community.
To quickly respond to Fleury, the problem is he's so polarizing. It's a political storm to honor him. Like that
was polarizing.
Is polarizing. Now,
yeah, I think he still is. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, like what about redemption? What about the comeback story that he is and that he's come from? And everybody knows his story. Like his book has been out there for, I want to say, almost a decade now. And the fact that the NHL and the Flames are not wanting to acknowledge that needs to change right now. That is complete bullshit. And I understand he's polarizing, but you got to see the redemption story here. You have to.
He's polarizing for different reasons than just what has happened in his past and his story. He's not doing himself any favors with his how he's acting on social media, and that's a big thing now. So I think he's until he needs to, if he's to be honored, he's going to have to take a step and try and find a way to mend the issues that have created him as a non-touch. You can't touch him with a 10-foot pole at this point without creating a massive storm where you don't know what's going to come out of it. So I think he needs to be for what he's done, for what he's gone through, his story and everything. I agree. I believe he does need to be honored in some way, but unfortunately it's not the time, and it's not gonna. It would cause too much trouble for the Flames in terms of PR than any at this point. So I get where you're coming from, Dev. The PR issue is he's a no-go at this point.
Yeah. I'll leave.
There'll be people who love it, but there'll be just as many very vocal people that would go against it.
And enough of them that the organization would just not want to go down that path. I think. Yep.
All right, let's leave it there unless we have anything else to talk about. I should mention, Sean, we kind of, before we were getting on air, Sean, your lookalike has been fired by the Detroit Lions. So you may be able to go on the field of Detroit and be the head coach of the Detroit Lions.
He's wearing the headphones today, and it just hit me like, boy, he sure looks like Matt Patricia on the sideline. He just needs the pencil in the ear, and that's it. Unfortunately for him, he's fired though.
The Detroit Lions, like, have they had a winning season in the last 30 years?
Yeah.
Had a couple. They were good for a while, and then you go to Mitch on the Bottom Line View. He'll tell you where the Detroit Lions are at. I'm not gonna get in. BLV.com. So how do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Connect 03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm on Twitter at Gordhouse09.
Heidi is Hyde Amazeballs. Schneids is SCHNEIDZ. He was out. He's working today, so that's why he's not on. I am KVULE. Podcast_hockey. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. Etc. We are working on getting out more content. We're going to have some midweek stuff coming up, just to be aware. And we also want to find a way to, we're going to be you're going to see some improvements in terms of production coming up, but also we want to find a way to get you more involved. So if you have a question, comment, please feel free to leave it for us and tell your friends and family about our podcast. We are the most underrated podcast in hockey. There it is. All right.